All right, so perfect. Now we go to execution. Executing a project requires what and what as input. First, the processes under integration for execution are what? You have direct and manage project work and manage project knowledge. Is that?
Direct
And manage project work and manage project knowledge.
direct and manage project work.
And manage project knowledge. Yes. So that's the process. That's what you have in the. Let me open the PM box here so that you can see clearly what we are doing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Good. So you have here what we are dealing with is. Can you see the board there? I mean the screen. It's too tiny. We are on chapter 4. Chapter 4 is project integration management. So first process, develop project charter. Second, which is planning process group, develop project management plan. Third, direct and manage project work and manage project knowledge. And then under monitoring and controlling process group, you have monitor and control project work, perform integrated change control. Closing process group, you have close project or phase. Now we need to know the inputs, tools and techniques and outputs for each of these processes. And when we said last time that the way to study a process is to first of all define that process, describe the concepts surrounding the process and the knowledge area, and then you perform the analysis on the inputs, tools and techniques and outputs. ITTO, inputs, tools and techniques and outputs. And then once you identify all the inputs, tools, techniques and outputs for each process, you now begin to see the logical relationship, what we call logical mapping and integration and application of these process across all the entire project management framework. How this process output, for example, the output of develop project charter is what? Project charter. So the project charter as output goes in as input to develop project management plan. And the output of develop project management plan is the project management plan itself, which is taken into consideration into many inputs like executing process group processes and monitoring and control processes, because you need the project management plan to be able to know how to direct the teams and apply the resources to manage to execute the project. And then you also, the project management plan also houses the procedures and policies guiding work authorization, guiding how the project will be at what stage or milestone will the project monitor and control be taking place, or observations, measurements, inspections, and all of that. And then it shows how the project will be validated and closed. All right, so that is what we did under integration. And the next topic that we covered is project scope management. First, I was asking about the inputs, tools, and techniques. The major outputs of direct and managed project work are what? Very important we identify that quickly. Direct and managed project work, major outputs is deliverables, right? Deliverables. Deliverables are intermediary products. When you are carrying out the work, when the work is being executed, you are having the results. Also, so Deliverables are intermediary products that come out at phase out. That means each phase, when a phase is closing, you definitely close, with the deliverable, the release of deliverables. Okay, so that is it. Are we okay then? One output there, direct managed project work deliverables. Another output is what? Work performance data. Work performance data are the raw observations and measurements that are collected during execution processes. And they are used at monitor and control processes because they are used to integrate and to make decisions to see how the project can be corrected and how the project can, whether it aligns to the expected performance. That's the health of the project. So track, regulate, and review the project, the health of the project as it were. So monitor and control process group does that. Okay. Closing process group now. Measure output of monitor and control project work. Who can cite that? No, monitor and control project work output. You definitely will have change requests. Yes, change requests and work performance data that goes as input now goes out as work performance information. And then the input to perform integrated change control. Input there is what? Change request. Change request. The change request, usually this perform integrated change control is like, it has a control board, change control board, CCB. Change control board. This control board is the board that the people who sit and approve changes, they analyze the impact of a change request. And then they see whether the change request will be beneficial, whether the change request could be in the form of what? Is it a corrective action? Is it a preventive action? Is it a defect repair? And if the change request is approved, then it will go out as the output of, approved change request. Then approved change request will go back to direct and managed project work as input and is going to be executed. That means the change that has been approved at perform integrated change control is implemented at direct and managed project work. So do you see that? Do you notice therefore that these processes are not arranged in a sequential linear path where you have to finish this one before you go to this one? No, they interrelate in a complex way that is beyond the scope of description in the PM book. All right, so perfect. Close project or phase. Close project or phase, the input will definitely be what exactly? If you want to close your project, what are the first things you want to consider as the input?
Closing date.
The project charter. Yes, that closing date will be inside the project charter, right? Because the project charter shows the summary milestone, the start and end, and the phases of the project. All right. So the closing date will be in the charter. So you need the charter. And what again? All right. We need the project management plan. And then what? Before you close your project, you must see whether the project has met the objectives. So the accepted deliverables. Deliverables, remember, deliverables are coming out at direct and managed project work here under execution, right? The output of the direct and managed project work, you have deliverables. And when these deliverables are released, they go into scope, validate scope. sorry, they move to control quality right down here. Are we seeing it? So as deliverables come out of direct and managed project work, they are moving straight down to control quality. From control quality, they will do quality check on those deliverables to see whether there are defects, whether there are everything is okay. It meets the quality standards defined by the customer in the quality management plan. The criteria there. Then there's a quality checklist and check sheets and so many quality tools that are used to make sure that they check the deliverable. The deliverable, when it is checked, it is called verified at the output, verified deliverable. So the verified deliverable output of control quality moves up to validate scope directly. Once they have checked the quality of the deliverable and it is verified, and they check it and say, okay, he has passed the quality test, the quality check, pass. They will now pass it to validate scope process 5.5. Validate scope process is actually where the customer comes and signs off and say, yes, this phase is complete, is okay. Once he has approved, he moves close to the output will be what? Accepted deliverables. So the output of this validate scope will be accepted deliverables. Then they will be moving straight to close 4.7, close project or phase. Remember, this closing process group is not closing only the final project at the end. No, it closes also a phase, every phase of a project. Remember, a project can have around 7 phases. So phase 1, conception. Phase 2, design. Phase 3, prototype. Phase 4, build. Phase 5, test. Phase 6, release. You know, so each of those phases have validate scope and closing the phase process. Okay, so understand that initiating process group initiates a project and also initiates a new phase of an ongoing project, while closing process group also closes a phase and also closes the overall project. We get the point there, see? So that is interesting. So initiating and closing process group, they do phase closure, phase initiating, and phase closure. Then validate scope is actually the customer signing off, formally accepting, formalization of acceptance of deliverables. So once deliverables have gone through quality control check at control cost, they are moving straight to validation. And validation moves them straight to close. So the input of close project or phase is accepted deliverables. They are accepted from where? The output of validate scope. The customer has signed off, so they are going towards closing or transition. And the output of accepted deliverable at closure is product, service, or result in transition, maybe into operations. Now they release the product, service, or result into operations. Are we there together? Yeah. I want to be sure. Okay. Yeah. All right, so perfect. We have done that review, but let's go to scope. Scope is, we have 6 processes under scope. The scope of a project really is about what is inside and what is not included, what should. So when you say you want to define the scope, you are trying to understand what are the features and the work efforts that are required and what should not be included. So it has the inclusion and exclusion. So the content. So now at this level, the first process there is plan scope management, which is giving the right structure and the policies and documentation for how the project scope will be planned. and validated and controlled. There, the next process is collect requirements. This collect requirements is vast. As I told you, it can even be another project, especially for multi-billion projects that span years. It can actually be a whole process on its own, requiring business analysts and so many subject matter experts who will collect requirements. Think about a big malaria program or a big drug discovery program or something, or this vaccine that they are talking about. Collect requirements is a whole thing. It's a whole, it can be a whole industry, global phenomenon, exercise, where they will need to get samples, get a lot of these inputs, get a lot of maybe souvenirs, surveys, questionnaires, using different approaches to get information. They are doing testing. Okay, so collect requirements is really vast, and you use so many tools: benchmarking, prototypes, facilitation techniques, group decision making. You have voting, you have multi-criteria decision analysis. Those are techniques that you find inside here. All right, so you collect requirements and then you define the scope. Defining the scope is giving a description to what exactly should be the project and what should not be included in the project. So you look at the requirements that are to be considered and the requirements that are not very important, less important. So you take off and prioritize those that are important, and you take these ones and say, okay, maybe this project has 1,000 requirements. 700 are very, high priority requirements. Then 200 are very low, medium, and 100 are low. So you can eliminate the low. If looking at meeting all those requirements may require a lot of money and time and resources and effort, then you can scope the project by defining which requirements will go into the project. That is it. Would they maybe in the development of a new cell phone, for example, will that cell phone have FM radio? Maybe it's not a priority. Those who are using phones today may not want, high-ended phones may not need FM. So it may not be a high-level requirement. It may be a medium or even low requirement, the least. So they would, after collecting requirements, they document them. They will not define the scope, look at the requirement, analyze them, and see which ones they should take. So that's define scope. Once you define the scope, you will now have what you call the scope statement. The project scope statement, you will use that project scope statement to be part of the create work breakdown structure. So when you take the deliverable and break it further, and you have down to work packages, the smallest elemental level, which is work packages, where you can assign resources, do estimations, and all of that. So you have the work packages, then you have done what you call decomposition, create work breakdown structure. Now the output of this create work breakdown structure is the scope baseline. The scope baseline is the approved version of the project scope, and that can only be changed through a formal change control process. Because why? If you change the scope of a project, you have actually altered the project. It is the blueprint of that project in terms of the product, the service, the results, and the features and characteristics or functionalities that characterize that product, service, or result. And then the scope also talks about the amount of work, effort that is required to deliver that product or service or result with those associated functionalities and features. So in that way, you have baseline the scope. So that is it. Scope baseline has 3 elements: scope statement, work breakdown structure, and work breakdown structure dictionary. Those are the three key elements on baseline. Did we see it in the last lectures? I'm sure we saw that. It's revision. Hello.
Hello.
All right, so we are fine. So we got the review of this chapter, so we can move now to the Rita and then take some few questions. Take some few questions now, and we can. All right, so here we have under integration, I think page 100, and we have to take these questions according to, okay, page 112 on Rita. Here we can answer these questions. Actions involved in project monitoring and controlling. Okay, these are not questions yet, but there is a set here that shows what are the actions. Okay, you need to study these actions anyway. Study the actions that are taken under each process group, because there is an associated exercise that comes here. We would look at it here. Let me see. Closing process group. Okay. Page 123 should be the one. Okay, let me check. Good, this is it. This is where I was driving our attention to. All right, page 111. Are we seeing? Let me turn it this way. We have to do this exercise. Actions. During which process group is this done? See what Rita asked. So you solve this by looking at the action, corresponding action. Number one, use the project scope statement. Use the project scope statement to gain approval of the final scope from the stakeholders before further planning is done. Which process group are we dealing with? Is this action taken? Which process group is this action taking place? Read it again. Use the project scope statement to gain approval of the final scope from the stakeholders before further planning is done. Remember, before further planning is done, use the project scope statement. That means that you have already defined the scope, and then what next? You gain approval of the final scope from the stakeholders before further planning is done.
Monitoring and control process group.
Why?
Because approval, control, and approval is needed in that process group before going further.
Now, that is very interesting. The first thing I would like to know is, okay, use the project scope statement to gain approval of the final scope from the stakeholders before further planning is done. Okay, you are trying to use the idea of validate scope there, if it's monitor and control. Now look at what the answer in Rita gives you. It gives us, it says planning, because you know why it is planning? Planning there, the answer there is planning, because it said before further planning is done. Now, you know, this is what we call the baseline, the scope. Use the project scope statement to gain approval of the final scope. The final scope is actually what is a baseline, the scope baseline.
Okay.
And once you develop the scope baseline is part of the, the scope statement is part of the scope baseline, and the work breakdown structure is part of the scope baseline, and the work breakdown structure dictionary is part of the scope baseline. So there are three elements of the scope baseline that you have. Okay, so that is how we master these process groups. You need to really take, so you do this exercise, there are 40 of them. The answers are there. So make sure that you first of all answer them yourself, and then come and check your answers. For example, number 2, determine high-level requirements, constraints, assumptions, and risks. This one is dealing with which kind of process group?
Subsidiary management plan.
No, we are dealing with 5 process groups. So which of the 5 process groups is this action being taken? For example, the actions, for example, each process group, let me just give you a small hint. You need to know the terminologies and the words that are used to describe. When, for example, those words are being used, you should mark how they are being used, and they'll be associated with each of these process groups. For example, initiating process group is associated with words like, or phrases like high level requirements, high level scope, high level schedule, high level summary budget, summary, so everything is high level, is overview. At the initiating, you are creating the charter, and the charter has the overview. That means there's the resume, the executive summary about the project. All right, so in that way, you are using words like what? High level, high level, high level. All requirements are at the level of high level. Then when you go to planning, you are dealing with detailing the scope. That means detailing the requirements. You are detailing the scope. You analyze and elaborate. So words like elaborate, detail, detailing the scope, elaboration of the scope, and whatever. So it's called, that means you are at the level of planning. When you see those words, detailing the scope, elaborating the scope, and the comprehensive management plan, or whatever, all of that is in planning. Then you go to executing, which are the kind of words there? Implementing the work, implementing the plan, implementing, and carrying out observations, you see, like work performance data. Implementing measurements, you're also doing measurements while execution is taking place. So that is it. And then implementing change requests, approve change requests is also part of it. So what is happening as a execution process group are these processes that are required for you to implement the plan that was detailed in the project management plan, and also implement the changes or change requests that were approved through the perform integrated change control. So basically what happens at execution is what? Implementation, measurements, observations being done, and all of that. Then you go to monitoring and controlling. Which are the key words there? The processes that require for you to track, regulate, and review the performance. You hear words like performance of the project, or the health of the project. So those are kind of words that easily give you a clue as to where each of these activities are taking place. Then you go to close project or phase process. The processes that are required for, that's the finalization of all activities across all knowledge areas by closing the phases, phase closure, administrative closure, procurement closure, claims and administration, maybe if a contract's closure, that is it. So all of that, and transiting the product, service, or result, and taking lessons learned. So closure is very important. Without closure, a project can still cost the organization so much. Imagine, if you don't close formally, it means you have not released the resources. The resources may still be charging you, billing you if you took a resource on hour, an expert on hourly basis, and then you don't close him when his work is supposed to have come to an end, he will still be charging the organization, you know. So closing is very important. They close each phase and then they close the overall project. Okay, so back to this exercise here. You do that, please. It's a 40 question, 40 activities there, and then you track the process group. So determine high-level requirements, constraints, assumptions, and risks. This is where we are at.
Planning process?
No.
Initiating process group.
Yes, that's it.
Yes, initiating process.
And then measure against the performance measurement baseline.
Monitoring and control process group.
Perfect. Performance measurement baseline. That's it. Tracking performance. Implement approved changes, including corrective actions, preventive actions, and defect repair. Where do we implement approved changes? Executing. I just said it. I said there are two things you are doing at executing. One, you are implementing the plan that was detailed in the project management plan, and also implementing the approved changes that were approved through the perform integrated change control under monitor and control project work. So that is what we do under executing. You implement the plan and also implement the changes, the approved changes. So you are under execution here. Number 5, reanalyze identified risks. This one may confuse you a little bit because it's actually monitoring and controlling. You may not be really able to get that. Use high-level planning and estimating data to determine whether the product can be achieved within the given constraints. Use high-level planning and estimating data to determine whether the product can be achieved within the given constraints. You see, you are planning. You are planning. Yeah. Okay, so please go through this and appreciate how this. Oh, I said there are 40. No, there are actually 59. Wow. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Oh, we are not right. We're not right in number 6. Look at number 6 there. Use high-level planning and estimating data to determine whether the product can be achieved within the given constraints. So we are at initiating, not planning, sorry. At initiating. Because there, for example, there you're using high-level planning and estimating data is like a business case. That business case, you use the business case to determine benefits, cost ratio, do a lot of analysis, and establish now whether the project will go into, the organization will commit resources to the project or not. And that's where they form the project charter. So it's initiating. So you see, verify and document that the project or project phase meets completion or exit criteria set in place during project planning. Closing process group, right? That's just it, right?
Yes.
Verify and document that the project or project phase, remember, closing process group deals with the closing process. That means closing the project and also closing a phase of that project. All the phases of the project must be closed using closing process group. All right, so verify and document that the project or project phase meets completion or exit criteria set in place during project planning is closing. Then conduct team building activities is executing actually. And truly, if you have mastered your 49 tables, you will see develop team, manage team, all are all under executing process. develop team, like conduct team building activities, is executing. Evaluate the effectiveness of risk responses in a risk review, is monitoring and controlling. See, evaluate, just the word evaluate the effectiveness. And you know, implement risk response and monitor risk is part of what kind of like risk review is, a monitor risk process. All right, so 49 tables process should be in you, and then please ensure that you finish this exercise this night before you close, before you rest. This exercise. And if you have not taken the test, please, you cannot come to class tomorrow, the next class tomorrow, without finishing test 1 and 2. You have to just do test, at least test 1. Yes, at least test 1. Then you can be extended to do test 2 tomorrow evening and test 3 on Sunday. And of course, I'm launching test 4, comprehensive test, 100 questions. That will be on Sunday evening. So you have to study very well. You have to study very well. I wish that tomorrow you have time, you can come to the center. We at 2 o'clock, 2 to 4, we can have a class.
Okay.
2 to
At
4
2
p.m.
o'clock.
Yes. All right, so that will be fine. 2 to 4, we can have a face-to-face class, and we will be doing schedule, project schedule management. We are going as fast as possible, so you have to catch up.
Okay.
All right, please, thank you very much. Go through this, and we'll meet tomorrow. We would review 2 exercises and then handle schedule management. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The same to you.